God or Atma. It is by way of stressing this important fact that Swami sometimes addresses his devotees as Divyatma Swarupalara, meaning embodiments of the divine Atma. We are now left with the question, we also have a mind, don't we? Where does that come from? You are all aware that even animals have brains, which is a part of the gross body of the animal concerned. Thus, the rat has a brain, the monkey has a brain, elephant has a brain, and so on. The brain is very much like the CPU of a computer. Humans, who are the end product of biological evolution, have also a brain, a very powerful brain, in fact. But they also have something much more than a mere brain, and that something is the mind. It is difficult to describe the mind, but we all know that we have it. The mind is not merely the brain, as many think it to be. Rather, it is something extra that is subtle, and between the gross body and the causal Atma. One may thus think of it as interface between the body and the Atma, an interface that has evolved by the brain of the body and the Atma growing towards each other, shall I say? The mind is extremely powerful, especially since part of it has grown out of the Atma, so to speak. So powerful is the mind that in Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, "Among the senses, I am the mind, and in living beings, I am consciousness." It is this power of the mind, directly derived from the Atma, that helped humans to quickly rise above primitive existence and within a few thousand years to reach amazing heights. In fact, so high have humans soared that they have now begun to totally dominate the planet. Remember, all this happened because of the power endowed to the mind by God. Now, the mind is remarkable in that it can focus attention not only on the world outside, but also look within. Thus it is that the mind can ask, "Who am I?" A question that Bhagavan Baba often raises and discusses in his discourses. To you and me, this question may sound strange. But when Swami is raising this question, what he is asking is the following. Of the three elements that make up your personality, namely the body, the mind, and the Atma, which of these do you identify yourself with?
You are not one person, but three. You are three. The one you think you are physical body. The one you think you are is a physical body. The one others think you are mental body. The one others think you are is mental. The one you really are. The one you really are is Atma, the spirit. You are the embodiment personification of the spirit. You are not playing with the body. Body is like a water bubble. Body is like a water bubble. Mind is like a bad monkey. Mind is like a bad monkey. Don't follow the body. Don't follow the mind. Follow the conscience. Don't follow the body. Don't follow the mind. Follow the conscience. That is your true form. That is true. That is principle of God. Having been this truthful form in you, the form of the beast, you are in search of something elsewhere.
What does that mean? What does it mean to say that I am the Atma? What Swami means is that our feelings, thoughts, words and deeds must reflect the fact that the core of our personality is the Atma. To make us understand what exactly this means, Swami points out that a person who is dominated by his body and senses would be rather like an animal with a tendency to be angry, be cruel, and so on. A person dominated by the mind, on the other hand, is likely to be clever, intelligent, creative, etc. But the mind-dominated person could also be aggressive, ambitious, cunning, unscrupulous, ruthless, and so on. In the worst case, the person could even be truly demonic. What about a person who is tuned to the Atma? How would that kind of person be? Swami has described that person also. Such a person would be kind, very loving, always compassionate, ever ready to help, always smiling, and so on. He would be the very embodiment of virtue and purity. Does that ring a bell? I'm sure it does. Yes, that description reminds us of Swami himself, does it not? Of course it does, and that precisely is why Swami often tells us, your life should be my message. That is the simplest way of saying, love all, serve all. Do not even think of hurting a person. Always try to help and never be selfish, etc. We have heard all that so many times, and yet, how many people do we find who conform to these principles? Sadly, very few. And why is that? That's because the mind comes in the way and distracts our attention completely from Swami's teachings. As Swami often tells us, our mind can be a good friend and show us the way to God. On the other hand, that same mind can mislead us and hand us over to the devil. Thus, the mind can be a friend or a foe. If we are not careful, enemy is what the mind would become.
So, it all comes down to this. What exactly should we do in order to prevent the mind from turning against us and instead steer us towards God? Well, the answer is simple. Follow Swami's teachings. So now you know why we are presenting this special teleserial wherein we recall many things that Swami has been telling us all these years. And to proceed further, we must have some idea of how, if we are not careful, the mind can trick and mislead.
Let us say there is a tourist walking around in that part of a big city where there are many casinos, nightclubs, and the like. The man sees a gambling den and feels the urge to go in and gamble, even though he does not have much money with him. This is what temptation is all about. Where exactly does this temptation come from? Baba says, temptation is a manifestation of a latent evil tendency lurking in the dark corners of the mind. That is where temptation hides like cockroaches do. Now, when do cockroaches come out of hiding? When it is dark and when there is no one around. In the same way, temptation shows its ugly face when there is the darkness of spiritual ignorance. So, our friend the tourist is pulled strongly by the temptation to gamble and perhaps even make some money. At the same time, something in him is sending strong warning signals not to fall for the temptation. There is thus a strong pull from two sides. What is the poor fellow to do? Swami says, what the man should do is simple. He must get in touch with his Atma within, and this connection he makes via the pipeline called Buddhi. He should ask the Atma, my mind is telling me to gamble, should I or should I not? And whatever is the advice that the Atma gives, he should faithfully follow. Atma would of course say, you fool, you have come to this city for a certain purpose. Do that job and do not get distracted by all these false attractions. They would only drag you to ruin. Incidentally, that is the reason why Swami says, always follow the master. Your conscience is your real master. Just to remind you, conscience, Atma, indweller. All these are just different ways of referring to Baba, who resides in our hearts. Let us go back for a moment to Buddhi, to which we made a reference. The simplest way of thinking of Buddhi is as a hotline to God within. Now, of course, you know that if the hotline is not kept in working condition, we cannot reach God when there is an emergency. That is pretty obvious. So, how does one keep this hotline in good working condition? Swami has the answer as always. He says, always avoid bad company. Avoid seeing what is bad. Avoid hearing what is bad. Avoid speaking what is bad. Avoid hurting others, no matter what the circumstance. Make sure you always feel good and think good. Make sure you always speak good and do good. Not very complicated rules, are they? But they must be followed strictly and regularly, remembering Swami would always be watching. Okay, one does all that. How does it help? In the following way. If you feel that mind might be misleading and tricking you, you can straight away dial the hotline and ask your conscience the following questions, describing what the mind is asking you to do. You then ask, is it right or is it wrong? Is it selfish or is it selfless? Is there any anger or jealousy involved? Is there any cheating or dishonesty involved? Will it harm anyone? Will it do good to others and make them happy? Finally, will God approve of what I am thinking of doing? If all these questions are asked in full sincerity and with the intention of staying true to Baba's teachings, you can bet that your conscience, which is nothing else but Swami himself seated in your heart, would guide you properly. So there it is. And now we come to the take-home lesson of the episode, which is, although we are made up of a body, the mind and the Atma, our true nature is divine. Therefore, all our feelings, thoughts, words and deeds must reflect the nature of the Atma in every possible way. In turn, this implies that all our actions must be in full conformity with Sathya and Dharma in all their aspects. As Swami would put it, your thought, word and deed must be totally pure and have the full fragrance of my love.
And now that is possible only when Swami becomes the constant focus of our lives. And why should he not be, considering that he has showered so much love on us all the time? Think about it. Thank you for being with us in this episode, and we hope that you will certainly join us again for the next episode. Jai Sai Ram.